commentator, master of ceremonies, and before the evening's over, you may call me some other names. This forum is being presented. Both sides were invited to discuss their cases and better inform the people who are and will be most affected by a national park in the Katahdin region. People who accepted the Maine Woods Coalition invitations are here tonight and prepared with presentations. They are Jim Robbins of Robbins Lumber Company and the Maine Forest Products Council, Doug Denico, Director of the Maine Forest Service, Andy Young, a member of Preserve Maine Traditions, and Henry Joy, our former longtime Maine State Legislator. Now, following the presentations, we would welcome questions from people in the audience who are pro-park, and people who are against the park, and people who are not decided yet which way they feel about the park. So without taking up a lot of time, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Jim Robbins of the Robbins Lumber Company. Jim.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming tonight to hear our side of the story. I wish you were hearing both sides of the story, but I guess at least you're going to hear our side. You may wonder why someone from Searsmont, Maine is up here opposing the pact. My family has had a white pine sawmill in Searsmont, Maine down near Belfast since 1881. And we get a lot of pine logs out this end of the state. So we feel this pact is going to seriously affect our wood supply, and so that's why I'm here. First of all, we believe the land is not worthy to be a pact. I'm not opposed to national pacts. I've been to 17 national pacts around the country, and every one I've been to was absolutely spectacular. And if this was spectacular, I would be supporting it. But in my opinion, this is just ordinary Maine timberland and should remain as such and be producing wood to employ people here in Maine. A lot of the pictures that the other side will show you are pictures of Mount Katahdin and the Baxter Pack. But that isn't the land that's going to become a pack. The land that's going to become a pack is east of Katahdin, and it is logged over timberland, which will grow back as timberland does. But it is not spectacular. Now, there are some beautiful rivers there. There's the Penobscot and the Savoy River and the Wasattuck Stream, which are really, really nice, there's no doubt about it. But if they qualify for national park, I guess probably all around Maine would qualify for national park, because we're fortunate to have a lot of beautiful rivers here in Maine. The second reason, I'm going to have to indicate here when this looks like it isn't working here. The second reason is the economic loss of the forest industry. Todd Gay was a professor of economics at the University of Maine, did a study, and came out with the fact that in the state of Maine, the forest industry is an $8 billion industry. Well, if you take that $8 billion and divide it by the number of cords that are produced here in Maine and work at the mills, that's 6.25 million cords. If you divide that into $8 billion, each cord adds to the state's GDP $1,280. Now, if you take the 150,000 acres that they're going to set aside, and you know it doesn't take long to say 150,000 acres, but think about it for a minute. That's equivalent to about 6 townships. 6 townships not producing any wood whatsoever. Okay, it's going to have a tremendous impact on the timber supply. So if you take that 150,000 acres times the average growth is about 0.35 cords per acre per year, and Doug will tell you from the Maine Forest Service it's probably more like 0.4, so I'm being very conservative. You multiply that times 150,000 acres and get about 52,000 cords of wood should be coming off that land each year. You multiply that out by $1,280, and that's going to have an impact on Maine's GDP of about $70 million a year lost to our GDP. I don't believe that pact is going to make up that difference in our GDP. The third reason I'm opposed to this pact is that the national pacts believe in everything natural. They believe in not fighting fires unless they're endangering a community. They don't believe in fighting insect infestations or diseases. And here's a quote from the National Parks website. While large destructive fires are unacceptable in regions with extensive encroachments by communities, they're mandatory in a region such as Greater Yellowstone ecosystem if it is to be maintained in a natural manner. Well, since the late 1970s, some 300 natural fires have been allowed to burn themselves out in Yellowstone. That is the quote unquote. Well, you know, when the Yellowstone had the fire a few years ago, they burned over 1,250 square miles, okay? And they recently had a fire in Glacier National Park. I was just out there last fall and saw where they had the fire, of 212 square miles. And just last year in Yosemite, 402 square miles burned over. Well, you know, fires, if you want to let it burn in the national park, that's one thing, but fires don't know where the boundary lines are. And when you get those boundary lines, you get a 150,000 acre fire going, it's going to keep it on going. And you know, you don't have to go out west to hear about this. You may remember 1974, right here in Baxter State Park, they had a big wind throw, tremendous amount of timber blew down. And we went in, the industry went in and wanted to salvage it, the environmentalists stopped it, got a court injunction against them. Said, you can't harvest that timber. And they were told, you know, it's a big fire hazard, you're going to have a fire if you don't salvage that timber. Well, the court injunction held up. 3 years later, they had a big forest fire there, and it burned 1,500 acres inside the park. 1,900 acres within the park, and 1,500 acres on Great Mountains land outside the park. If this park gets set up, we're setting ourselves up for the same thing again. And you know, we're going to have a spruce budworm infestation. You know, they come along every 30, 40 years, and we're due for another one very shortly. It's already in Quebec and New Brunswick coming this way. And if that happens, you're going to have lots of dead trees, and you're going to have a forest fire situation set up again. The next reason I'm opposed to this park is the loss of local taxes. The creation of the park would take about 150,000 acres of production and the tax production, and normal tree growth is about $2 per acre. Okay, so that's about $300,000 if you're going to lose your local taxes for tree growth. Now, the other side will tell you that the Department of Interior is going to make up for that in a program they call Payment in Lieu of Taxes, and that you're going to get $326,000 from them for that. Well, the last I knew, the Department of Interior ran on our U.S. tax dollars. So there's another $326,000 it's going to cost us taxpayers. So you add that all up, it's about $626,000 that we're going to lose between local, state, and federal tax dollars. The next reason is job creation. The park advocates say that their parks are going to create 400 to 1,200 jobs. And that's a 75,000 acre park, a 75,000 acre recreation area. Well, Baxter Park is there now, okay? And I called up Baxter Park, I said, how many people do you people employ? He said 21 full-time and 40 part-time, okay? Now, granted, there are ancillary jobs outside, and they talk about all those parks down to Acadia. But Acadia is a lot different. You know, Acadia's have much more infrastructure. You got the hotels and bar habit and so forth, which, by the way, I'll shut down, mostly shut down in the winter. I also want you to understand that these jobs are going to be seasonal jobs, okay? And they're going to be replacing forest industry jobs that average $50,000 a year, okay? I also find it ironic that Roxanne Quimby is interested in creating jobs when she moved her own company from Maine down to, I believe, North Carolina. Number 6 is the danger of park expansion. Now, I believe there's a real danger this park will expand. You know, the stores for years have been trying to create a 3.2 million acre park. And Roxanne Quimby and her team will tell you, no way do they want that. But you know, she did used to be on their board. And you can't make me believe that once that footprint gets established, it's going to be like a cancer growing. And all the environmental groups are going to be all the time trying to expand that park with that 3.2 million acre park. And the best way to stop that is not let the footprint get started to begin with. Number 7, Millinocket is a prime site for a mill. And I think it's an absolute tragedy what has happened here in Millinocket. And frankly, I think this path is going to set you up for another Gate Street situation, another economic disaster. And there's nothing that any of us would like in this room than to see mills back here in Millinocket. And you know, Millinocket is a great place for a mill. You've got the Golden Road that terminates right here, all that wood coming out through Millinocket. to get to other mills. You've also got a rail system, you've got the interstate highway, and you've got a willing workforce. You've got all the ingredients here. Now, maybe it won't be a paper mill, but maybe it'll be a pellet mill or a sawmill. You know, just recently, Irving opened up a brand new sawmill in Nashville, just up the road. I was there a couple of weeks ago, went through that fantastic mill. Maine just bought the old Levesque mill in Massachusetts. They're going to be expanding that. Pleasant Grove has a great mill just down the road here in Dover, Foxcroft. But frankly, all of us mills depend on that wood to be the sideways as our mill is in Searsmont. The mills in Millinocket, East Millinocket, may not be using that wood anymore, and that's a terrible shame. But all of us other mills all over the state are still using all that wood. All that wood is still being used, and we need that wood. And if you build a pack and you start cutting back on timber production, and there may be problems with emissions from projected mills, nobody's going to build a mill there. Let's not preclude the possibility of a mill getting back here in the Millinocket area. Okay? The next problem is losing control of the federal government. Now, the state of Maine would be turning over control to the federal government. And the other side would tell you, yeah, but we're going to have an advisory board that's going to tell them how to run the pack. Are you kidding me? You remember last summer when they shut down Acadia when the government ran out of money? They wouldn't even let us go down there and hike. They wouldn't even let people in the Cobstruck State Park because they had to go across Moosehorn Federal Wildlife Refuge. That's how much influence we have in Maine with the federal government. Folks, you won't have any influence. And maybe they tell you they think they're going to, but I'm afraid that they're telling you a pipe dream. One of the main reasons Governor Bristol actually created Baxter Park was to keep the federal government out. In a May 5, 1937 letter, he wrote to Attorney Sheldon Wardwell, quote, "No one feels more strongly against the federal government invading the state than I do. And whatever parks we have in Maine, in my opinion, should be state rather than a national park." The next problem is buffer strips. Many of the national parks have buffer strips around them, which they don't want people in there making noise, cutting timber, and doing whatever they want to do. And that, again, is going to affect our timber resource even more. And if you don't believe it, look at the Appalachian Trail became a national park. And immediately, Saddleback ski area had tremendous problems with it. They wouldn't let Saddleback expand their ski area on their own land. We also have buffers we have to deal with in the Allagash Wilderness Waterway, which is even a federal park. But that's an example of how buffer strips can affect you. The next thing is loss of access for hunting and snowmobiling. Okay? There's great tradition of that here in Maine. I love to do both of those myself. Hunting will definitely not be allowed in the park. There's not a national park that allows hunting. Okay? Now they may allow snowmobiling, but it is interesting to note that Box St. Criminal Gang just on April 1 cut off access to the Overlook snowmobile trail right below Bowling Lodge, Bowling Camps on the river, that cable bridge that goes across the river. So I doubt very much that they're going to allow snowmobiling also in the park. I think they probably will in the National Recreation Area. That's what they say, and I do believe that. But you aren't going to have it in the 75,000 acre park, I don't think. Access fees. Some people think access to National Park is free. It isn't. I know, but I go to Baxter Park a lot. I mean, to Acadia National Park a lot, and everybody's paying a fee because I got a senior pass, so I don't pay anymore, but I used to. But National Park fees are going up dramatically, and they're going up dramatically because they're about $11.5 billion in debt. Okay? So you're not going to get free access. We have this wonderful tradition here in Maine of allowing people free access on our land. My family owns a township around Nicotalis Lake, West Lake. 23,000 acres wide open to the public anytime you guys go down there, and I hope you do go down there and use it. And almost all of Northern Maine is that way. Now, we do pay small gate fees for the North Maine woods. But, you know, we should be willing to. I'm happy to do that. But don't think you're going to get into the national park for free, and those rates are going up. Another problem is there's no plan for the park. At least the public hasn't seen the plan. And they tell you that 15% of the people that are going to go to Acadia are going to come up here. Well, that would be about 375,000 people a year in a 3-month period. If that would happen, that would be great. But I think that's going to be pretty crowded if you try to put that many people. That's over 4,100 people a day on those few dirt roads where there are no hotels, no running water, no restaurants, electricity, campgrounds, and beautiful scenery. Acadia has all of those. this proposed park has none of this, unless you look at Baxter Park, and they keep selling Baxter Park. And that in itself is going to be a problem, because people are going to come up here and they're going to say, what do I do here? There's nothing to do. Oh, well, I guess forget about the garden, I'll go and climb the garden. But Baxter Park is already too busy. They don't want more than what they can handle right now. It's going to likely create a problem for them. The next reason I would like to see them not have a park, why don't they put a conservation easement on it? Now, granted it's their land, they can do what they want to do, but when they go to make a national park, it's affecting all of us, that's why we have a say in it. But that's what we did on our township down in Township 40, down in Nicotawas. We now have the timber to harvest, we still pay all the taxes, the public has to be used forever. To me, that's a win-win for everybody. We're protecting the natural resources, protecting the scenery, protecting the eagles. We've got to put the top, we pay the taxes, and you've got to recreate on. We can do the same thing here if they want, but they won't consider it. I wish it would be considered. And you know, right here down the Maine, in the proposed restore 3.2 million acre national park, there's already 2 million acres of that that has conservation easements on it, protecting those values right now today. Okay, the next reason is I'd like to know, is this going to be a wilderness or a high-use park? This is a picture I took of a hotel at Glacier National Park last fall, which is a spectacular place, another spectacular park. And that hotel holds hundreds of people, and it gives those people a place to stay and eat. And they go there, and then during the day they run around to the mountains and take pictures and really, really enjoy themselves. And that's what I think we ought to have up here, but we don't know what we're going to have. I believe it's maybe going to be a wilderness park, because when Plum Creek tried to put in their conservation easements around Greenville, you know, NRC and all the reservation groups fought that tooth and nail, because they didn't want those 2 resorts they were going to build that people could stay in and enjoy it. But now that same group and the other environmental groups are up here supporting this park, and that tells me they want this to be a wilderness park. And so therefore, if it's a wilderness park, you are not going to have a lot of tourists, and you're not going to have a lot of jobs, because there'll just be very little access to people. The next reason is emission restrictions. And the other side to me, this isn't true, but I can tell you, the Robbins Lumber Company in 2001 bought a 2 megawatt, 1,500 horsepower Caterpillar diesel electric unit. And where we're located in Searsmont, we're 36 miles from Acadian National Park. And because we're within a 50-mile circle of Acadian National Park, we were told we can only run that 1,200 hours a year. Okay? So that's what we do. Actually, we don't run it that much because the cost of diesel went up, and it hasn't become a problem because we couldn't afford to buy the diesel and instead of running biomass instead. But it is in our emissions license that you can't run it more than 1,200 hours a year because we're within 50 miles of the park. So this park's going to be 10 miles from Millinocket, and I believe that's going to have an effect on not only the mills in Millinocket, but in Lincoln, Ashland, Massardis, and so forth. It's going to be that danger, okay? And I understand that when they wanted to do some work here on one of the paper machines in Millinocket, that they received a letter from the Inland Fish and Wildlife and the National Park Service about what effect it was going to have on Moosehorn and Acadia and Campbell, okay? So that's a very real danger. Right now, there are 3 areas of Maine that are Class 1A restrictions. There's the White Mountain National Park, Moosehorn Federal Wildlife Refuge, and Acadian National Park. Those are all 3 federally owned areas. This will be a 4th one. And granted, it says the law today, it doesn't have to be, but what's to say they can't change the law and make one? I think that danger will be there, okay? The next one is Log Talk access. The new park may prohibit logging trucks if they get shut out because they're landlocked, okay? Well, those lands be taken, those roads be taken by eminent domain. The proponent says they'll only buy them from willing sellers. But I've talked to landowners that have land that got landlocked by Roxanne Quimby, and after she wouldn't let them go across that land to haul the wood out, they couldn't get at that land to cut the wood. Guess what? They eventually became willing sellers because they had no way to harvest the wood. So I believe that's going to be a problem. The next problem is, how much parkland do we need? In the United States, we have 266 million acres. This is as of U.S. Forest Service figures in 1989. 266 million acres that are in parklands, wildlife refuge, and other preserves. And on that map up there, that's equivalent to the United States area, everything in red and blue. It's all of New England, New York, Massachusetts, and some of the mid-Atlantic states. The only productive forest is 21%, which is equivalent in green, okay? So, 266 million acres, that's 13.3 times the size of the state of Maine. Whole state of Maine. How much do we need? Okay? The next thing, this is the big picture. Let's talk about world population growth. Maybe that seems a little unreasonable here to see this long number market Maine. But you know what? The world's population is increasing. It is now at 7.3 billion people, and it's increasing to 20 million people a year. And all those people are going to need clothing, housing, and food. And guess what? We get housing from wood. And we cannot afford to tie up vast tracts of land for singular uses. We're going to have multiple use where we can use it for recreation and producing natural resource products. Also, number 19, the federal government's a terrible land manager. If you don't believe me, just go out west, right around Montana and Idaho. You'll see millions of acres of burned timberland and dead and dying trees. I was up there last fall, and it was just absolutely disgusting what's going on. And so is that what we want to do? We want to turn over our land here in Maine to people that manage their land like that? The National Park Service does not believe in cutting wood. And so it's not going to be hazardous here, and you're going to see a lot of dead and dying trees. And finally, we can't afford another path. The National Park Service is currently $11.5 billion behind in its maintenance of its lands and groves. In fact, the Canadian National Park itself is $57 million behind. So that concludes my speech. Thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Jim. Up next, we have the Director of the Maine Forest Service, Doug Denico. Doug?
I'm not going to follow Jimmy Robbins. A lot of passion there. I went to school with Jimmy. Seems like ages ago. Jimmy went to work in his father's sawmill. He's retired. You can see he's touring out, doing the world tour of all the parks, and I'm still working. I'd like to know what I did wrong, or what he did right. I'm here tonight to try not to be on either side of the issue, but to some facts about the Maine forest and put that in some perspective on what's going on around the state and other parts of the country. I had an interesting kind of a deja vu feeling coming down here tonight. I drove down to Portland last Wednesday to deliver a presentation to a bunch of scientists, and because I went down 295, wailing along at a reasonable speed. And I got in late by coming down the Telos Road in Haymoth Lake. If you want to see the difference in the state of Maine in a few miles, you get it right there. When you go to Portland by 295, Millinocket by the Telos Road, there's a little difference in speed. Same car I used though. I can't see with these glasses. I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 things. I'm going to talk about the growth of the state. I'm going to talk about the harvesting that's going on, imports and exports, the role they play. I was going to talk about a little bit about sustainability and what the park may have an influence on PAC. So Lucas brought those points up last time. And I want to talk about the future of the forest industry in Maine. So the growth itself in Maine, the Maine Forest Service is in charge of knowing what we grow in the state, and we've got over 3,000 permanent plots located around the state, which gives us a measure continuously, but we summarize the data every 5 years. So we've got a real good handle on what we grow. You get the total growth by just multiplying the number of acres we've got, which is about 17.4 million times the growth on these 3,000 plots. And I can tell you that every acre counts towards calculating that growth that's available. The only acres that don't go into the acres that are prohibited from cutting by statute law are acres that don't grow more than a quarter of a car per acre. So no matter if something's been recently cut or whether it hasn't been cut for 50 years, it all goes into that calculation. So whatever acreage is taken out of that mix or put into that mix affects what we grow. And that's important because when people look at the state, that's one of the factors they look at. They look at what we're growing and also what our inventory is and how much else is being harvested. So growth is important, and every acre does count towards that figure that we've got. And it goes between 6 and 7 million costs a year, depending on various factors. Harvesting, it's interesting. We harvest just a little bit less than we grow. And that's been going back and forth for a while. But right now we harvest a little bit less than we grow, principally because of the economic downturn in 2008 hasn't quite bounced back. And as a state forester, I get to go on these tours around the United States. Every state has a state forester. That's my other title. And what we do is we keep an eye on the federal government, see what they're up to, and we try to get all the money we can for our respective states. So I get to tour around the country, and something that's really been amazing to me is how many states grow a great deal more than they harvest. And they're all proud of this fact. Why, they can't say enough about it. Each year, states put out a report, and that's the first thing they glow eloquently about is how much wood they're putting on the stone and not harvesting. And all I can think of is how many jobs are you giving out for that amount of wood that you're not consuming. And Jim mentioned the figure about $1,300 a car when it works its way through. And some of these states, well, he mentioned Montana, I think out there, they're growing they're harvesting maybe a fifth or less of what they grow. And you get in the Midwest, it's about probably harvesting about half of what they grow. In Vermont's about 2/3 of what they grow, and so on and on. And even the attitudes as you go around the country, I always thought foresters were conservative, but I've run into a lot of foresters that still want to stop and don't want industry. One of our dear neighbors, the States, very recently had an opportunity to have a manufacturing plant come into the state, and even though they were growing a third more than they were harvesting, they didn't want any part of this industry coming to the state out for being nameless. But it's very near here. But that kind of attitude I don't understand, because gods would translate the jobs very easily. One thing that may escape people, who's running those slides? Am I doing that? Okay. The other one you really ever need to get to is the import-export slide. That's the only one I want to talk about. The rest I just add to it. I've done this before. What's interesting in Maine is we actually manufacture more wood than we harvest. Sometimes we actually manufacture more wood than we grow, and we do that by importing wood. We import about 1 million tons or more every year. We've done that for a long, long time. So you've got we're surrounded by these states that are somewhat reluctant to get into the manufacturing game. They feel real good about throwing wood in the stump, and it's to our benefit. And if they don't want the jobs, we'll bring them here. We've been doing that for a long time. If you ever get that slide up, you'll see that there's been about 1 million tons a year coming into the state for a very long, long time. A couple of things that Lucas brought up. Sorry, I hate to talk about something that's not here, but I guess he has a chance. He mentioned that they were going to cut sustainably on the piece of the ground that's east of the Penobscot. And that's an interesting word, sustainability. A lot of you hear that all the time. They're going to cut sustainably. And there's no one figure of that sustainability word. I think a lot of people feel that there's one figure for any plot of ground, and that's sent down from wherever the mountain, and it's defined in a stone tablet. It is not. Sustainability, if you had the same tract of land, but you had different lands have different objectives. The sustainable harvest level could be as much as 100% different. And I'll give you an example. If someone was into growing old trees or into growing a lot of dead trees or wildlife dead trees, I had wide no-cut zones around their brooks and along their ponds, they could dumb down that sustainable harvest rate very easily. Whereas if someone wanted to grow timber, they could double that figure very easily. And probably the range you get is from almost zero would be a sustainable level for some people, all the way up to almost 2/3 of a crop rate per year. So again, when you hear the word sustainable, someone's going to have a sustainable, read the fine print, because that could be almost nothing, or it could be quite a bit of wood. So beware of that word. It has different meanings depending on who owns the land. And we talked about Baxter up to Ashland, and I get the feeling from Lucas that, and I'm going to bring Baxter up because Governor Baxter was very wise, and he knew there'd be things that would happen at Baxter that he couldn't foresee, so we put together a advisory group. It's the IFW Commissioner, the Director of Maine Forest Service, and the Attorney General. So I'm the chair of that, so that's why I can talk about it. But frankly, some of us are kind of worried about the overflow from this park if it ever happened. And Lucas said essentially is, you turn people away now, turn more away. And the truth of it is we don't turn many people away right now. What usually people do is they take the second best place and they go to the north end of the park and those things and still go to the park. But with the kind of overflow we're talking about, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people, and I don't envy whoever's running the park at that time and having to deal with that overflow. Baxter is very specific, resource first, people second. Baxter is not going to be overflowed with people. It won't be if we shut up the door. It's an uncomfortable situation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the future. And first I mentioned, as you came in here, you got a fact sheet. And I didn't announce that specifically because facts get kind of boring after a while. And in fact, I threw out there it was the $1,300 a cod, which I think is incredible what a cod does for the economy of Maine. But I want to talk a little bit about the future. And your view of the future depends, I think, on where you live. And I came to Millinocket in 54, 55. My father had a job of putting in a subdivision for Great Northern. And you talk about a boom times. And there was enough restaurants in this town that you could weigh 500 pounds before you had to watch your way through them. And then 3 or 4 years ago, I went door-to-door campaigning for a successful senator that was running at Doug Smith. And the Millinocket I saw door-to-door wasn't a shadow of a Millinocket I saw back in 54, 55. And I think the folks here have every reason to be discouraged. You've seen, a lot of you've seen the best, and you've seen some really bad times recently. However, if you're living in Portage or Nashville or Ashland, you have a totally different outlook, because that place is booming. They've got a brand new sawmill, other businesses have come to life, a new sawmill has come to town. It's a place to be reckoned with. If you're over in Rumford, you have a different attitude, because DuPage Mill now is under different ownership and it has a bright future. Look at Old Town, same thing. That looks like it's going to be a success. Again, if you're downriver and you're living in Bucksport, you're probably not too happy. But again, it's hard not to be discouraged. But where I stand, there is a good future in Maine. There isn't a week that goes by that someone doesn't call my office and wants to know if we have X amount of wood available for a mill. It's interesting. Here in Maine, we have almost what we grow. These other states don't, and yet people still want to come here. I think I figured out, I think they want to go to a state where people actually use their forest. They don't want to go to a state where they don't use their forest, and they think storing wood on the stump is the greatest thing going. But if you look at what's going on around the state, just don't focus on where you live. That's hard. It's almost impossible, probably. we do have a bright future. Jimmy pointed it out. Millinocket is really the nexus of everything that is good for infrastructure going on. But I'm bullish on Maine and the forest industry from where I stand. I see nothing but positive things moving ahead. Some bumps, absolutely, we've always had bumps. We're going to have a few more into that.
So far, everything's stayed right to about 15 minutes. Hi, Andy. Ladies and gentlemen, member of Preserve Maine Traditions and a great speaker, Andy Young.
Is this working? Okay. Hi, my name is Andy Young. I'm a member of Preserve Maine Traditions. I don't know about the great speaker part. I'm trying not to put you guys to sleep tonight. I'm going to have to stand over here and I have to sit down because I don't know how long my back's going to hold out. I got interested in the issues around the national park 8 or 9 years ago. Family's been going up to the Mattagamon region for 40 plus years. All of a sudden, gates started going up, access to land started being cut off, places that we had recreated, those big bad international corporations that everybody likes to run down, had a lot of people access, had a lot of camps. People were renting camps, renting land for camps. And all of a sudden, the land use began to change. And here's the deal, Roxanne owns the land, she can do whatever the heck she wants with it. If that means burning down your camp, kicking you off the land, and making you move, where again, those big bad international corporations let you do that, so be it. And I remember asking up there, I said, well, maybe a national park would be a good thing for you guys. And I got run up one side and down the other. I was told basically, you know, don't make a distinction between what she's doing, or different between what she's doing and what Restore was doing. And what that led to me was to begin to look into the issue a little bit more. I'm usually working full-time and have a lot of stuff going on running a business. I've run into back issues the last couple of years, and I can only watch Netflix so long, and I started researching stuff. I got to stay busy. And I began looking at stuff around the park issue and realizing there was no difference between what Roxanne was doing and what Restore was asking. She was just giving the seed for them to get started on what they wanted to do. And make no mistake about it, you know, this is just the beginning. 2 years ago, they came up with a headwaters report. And I know Lucas and a lot of other people are going around telling you that, you know, they commissioned a study which predicted 400 to 1,000 jobs. And I know this region is desperate for jobs. I know. Changes in the economy, changes in the mills. My grandfather worked at the Knox Woolen Company in Camden. When I was a kid growing up, they used to make something called endless felts. He was part of the factory that went out to the lumber mills all over the state as part of the paper making, some of the paper mills as part of the paper making process. And then changes in the industry came around, and all of a sudden they didn't need the felts anymore, and everybody came in without a job. It just changes to the industry that, you know, that's a part of our economy. That's a part of what happens. It changes do come. And I know it'd be nice to look at those 400 to 1,000 jobs that are predicted. And you'll hear Lucas and a lot of the other people saying that report predicted the jobs. The fact is that it didn't predict any jobs, and I'll get to that in a minute. As I say, part of preserving traditions, what we advocate for is very similar to what Jim was talking about and Doug was talking about. You know, the fact that there are forestry easements that we put on land that guarantee access. I guarantee a wood supply. Look kind of great. I'm standing over here because this won't bounce off the screen. As I began looking at that headwaters report, you know, I read the thing. I kind of wanted to know what was in it. It talks about, you know, similar regions, you know, that they compared 6 national parks and 4 recreation areas around the country. And what we maintain, you know, having looked at it, none of those regions, these peer regions, bear any resemblance to the Gotthard region, none at all. Let's see, there it goes. Roxanne also talks about the fact that she's, you know, donating a $40 million endowment to this park. You guys have probably heard that a number of times. The National Park Service, you know, they're talking about it's going to create this park that's going to be a world-class thing that will bring in all of these visitors. The National Park Service is dead broke. It's talking about closing down parks as we speak right now because they can't afford to maintain them. They're so unsafe, they no longer can meet safety requirements. In that headquarters report, we're going to take a look tonight at some of the peer regions that they talked about. These similar regions that we've had in there. The job predictions that are being talked about. Just so you know, the authors of the report never predicted anything. They talk about imagining, and we'll get to that in a minute. In that report, it uses Piscataquis County as well as Penobscot County. And I found that curious. Why Piscataquis County if this was just on the East Branch? Did somebody get confused with the restore plan? Did somebody get confused with their proposed visitor center in Monson? The question is why? Why did that headwater study? My guess is it allowed them to claim visitors to the Moosehead region as well. It also talks about the fact that it will conserve the land. Just so you know, Roxanne's land is the only unpreserved piece of property around that state park. Everything else is either Nature Conservancy, Audubon, or enforcement communities. This is wording. This is cut and pasted from the Headwaters report. Second part down, analyze the economic performance of local communities adjacent to these different areas. It says we selected these 16 regions based on similarities. Now there's a similarities to your region. So I could look at some of these parks, but some of them I'd never heard of before. I was just kind of curious. I also contacted the guy who wrote the report. I guess I had the audacity to email him and say, start asking some questions. And when I asked him a question about how they came up with these numbers for the predicted jobs, this was his answer. We didn't do any job predictions. And I love this classic double speak. Scroll down there a little bit. Creates a basis for people to imagine what would be possible. Now, you've been all told there's all these job predictions, job predictions, job predictions. I mean, Lucas is a broken record of job predictions. The Bangor Daily is great at trumpeting job predictions. The author of the report says they did no job predictions. Yeah, let's see. I'm going to look at the peer regions themselves. There are 6 peer regions of national parks. One of them was Acadia. How about you guys? I grew up on the coast of Maine. You guys have probably come down for some visits and stuff. The entire coast of Maine is part of the experience. Acadia just sits, the crown jewel that sits at the end of it. But people just don't come to Acadia. They come for the whole deal. They talked about the Hancock County having this incredible job growth from 1970 to 2010. York County and Cumberland County had greater growth during that same time period. I don't know if you guys noticed there's no national park in there. Hancock County has one of the highest unemployment rates during the wintertime. I grew up on the coast of Maine, working in restaurants. It's dead zone during the wintertime. You make minimum wage in the summer, you get some college kids, you get a chance to wait tables, and then they import labor. There's a lot of Bar Harbor. You go from Trenton, Ellsworth, down into Bar Harbor, it's mostly shuttered for 6-7 months of the year. Is that the economic development you guys want to base it on? And the startup businesses come and go. People start up restaurants. They start up different businesses. They can't make it go. The turnover for businesses is intense. We looked at Badlands. That's another word we looked at. The Headwaters looked at Badlands and claimed that it was a comparable place to Penobscot County. He claimed that it was comparable to the Millinocket region. Now, I had no idea what Badlands. I mean, I guess I'd heard of it, but didn't quite know what it was about. Just so you know, it is in the same county. They use the economic data from this as Mount Rushmore and 3 other national parks. Now, what do you suppose really created the economic growth of that area? Do we have that up here in this region? It's also home to Ellsworth Air Force Base. They're employing 7,000 direct employees, plus 2 other military installations. Installations, not institutions. Something like that. Left. Rapid City is also 25 miles from a little motorcycle rally that takes place at a place called Sturgis. Can you guess maybe where most of the tourism dollars come from? You guys have a motorcycle rally that brings in 600,000 people. You begin to look at these numbers, and this Headwaters report, it's a con job. I'm sure Roxanne called up and said, I need a report that shows everybody up in Maine how good a national park's going to be for them. They went out and looked for 6 national parks that would do it. This is what it looks like over here, the summer festival. Or maybe this. Congaree, I had no idea what Congaree was. I guess I'd heard of it. It's 19 miles to Columbia, South Carolina, the capital of South Carolina. This is only a few regions. I'm not making this up. This is a study that Roxanne commissioned. This is what is imagining your 400 to 1,000 jobs. Metro region population of 800,000. Headquarters of 3 Fortune, you guys have 3 Fortune 500 companies headquartered here. This is the skyline. This is your peer region. You guys are just the same as this. 50,000 students in 8 colleges and universities. Just take a look. Just no market. You know, there's a football game on Saturdays. 100,000 people in the stadium. By the way, the stadium, I think, is 6 miles from the entrance to the National Park. Again, this is your peer region. It's also home to Fort Jackson, U.S. basic training for infantry. 50,000 soldiers each year passing through. It also used Great Smoky as one of your peer regions. Now, if any of you guys know Great Smoky and the other one was going to be Shenandoah, they're byways to north-south travel. Hundreds of miles have already developed skyline drives, world-class amenities, tar roads, scenic overlooks, all these things. It also is home to the Harris Casino, which brings in, as you can see, 4 million visitors a year. A lot of them don't ever make it to the National Park, by the way. But you get to count the tourism dollars that's being created by the National Park. I began looking at this, and the con job was just, it gets better. It gets better. Just the different things that are in this region that have nothing to do with the national park that actually drive the economy of that region. They'll lead you to believe that the economy of those regions are driven by the national parks. You know, it's just these places have things that just don't exist other places. Shenandoah, you know, University of Virginia, James Madison, just miles from the entrance to the parks. Charlottesville, Metro region, 200,000 people. 1 hour from Washington, D.C. with a metro population of 6 million. Just an hour away from the national park. Yet they're going to claim that that is the equivalent of it. Zion, I've always heard of Zion, I had no idea what it was. As you can see, there's a lot of things there that really have nothing to do with this area. The biggest one is that, you know, they chose the smallest park in that region. This town is also the gateway to the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Lake Mead, Lake Powell, or, you know, Lake Powell. These are places that are already developed. They have economies driven by other things. They have nothing to do, you know, with what this region looks like. Once again, we didn't do any job predictions. We looked at the similar units around the country and offered a range of jobs that those units created as a basis for people to imagine what would be possible. We also did not do any budget estimates for the like facilities. It pictures not a wilderness park, not dirt roads. Joe at Madagascar told me today how many visitors come up there during the summertime, and they go up to Baxter when they realize that it's dirt roads in Baxter, they turn around and go home. You know, people aren't looking for, you know, wilderness experiences, and the job numbers that are imagined aren't based on wilderness experiences. They're based on those 6 national parks that we just saw there a minute ago. You know, and Lucas, I've talked to Lucas, he'll respond, you know. It's not just a national park, it's also a national recreation area. You've got an added bonus. Doesn't want to leave there. Do you know this time Roxanne doesn't even own all the land in the national recreation area? They've drawn an acquisition boundary around 50,000 acres of other people's properties. Some of you in this audience may own some of that property that they now want to put. Oh, wait a minute, parks aren't going to increase. How many times have you guys heard the park size will not increase over the last 10 years? It's a mantra. Well, guess what? They decided it's going to be 50,000 acres bigger than what they actually own. At this point, there's not even access. They don't have a plan. They don't even know where they're going to access it. They don't own it. They don't own the Whetstone Bridge. They keep saying they're coming in from Stacyville. They don't own the bridge. They don't own the land around it. How are they going to get to this land? Imagine making plans for other people. That sounds like a federal government idea, doesn't it? Are those Maine ideas or those out-of-state ideas? We've seen the out-of-state ideas for generations. If DC gets that land and turns it into a national park, but they don't own the entrance, do you suppose they're going to stand for that? That's something happened then. We look at the peer regions for the national recreation areas. Same thing. They claim that the national park led to this incredible growth in the region of Montrose County. Problem was that growth all took place before the national park was established. It's the home, and maybe you guys already have this, maybe you have a candy manufacturer here, maybe you have an Ross Reels or something equivalent to it already in this place. Its best paid jobs are energy and such, laws of tourism. And you begin to look at all of these different peer regions, the national recreation areas too. Crater Lake, a million people sitting around there. Gentleman Gore, I'm a builder. I use Gentleman. Well, apparently, I discovered that's where its headquarters are. It's been there for over 50 years, almost over 60 years, employing 20,000 people. Yet the report makes it sound it's the catalyst for the economic development of that region. Another just fun fact, you know, just it happened to be an area that has some of the greatest geothermal springs, has the lowest energy costs in the country. You guys have the lowest energy costs in the country? You know. And so it goes. I mean, these things are just over and over and over again. Each of these, you know, areas, they want to claim that parks are the catalyst for it. This is what creates these 400 to 1,000. This is why we have to imagine it, by the way. Lucas says, you know, the recreation will have guaranteed access. As we said, Roxanne doesn't even have access. How can you guarantee access to something he doesn't own? Big question is, where's the plan? They keep talking about this plan. Where's the plan? Where has this ever happened before with a park service that you can guarantee all of these things when the federal government takes over? The reality is you can't. Once it's being federally managed, the land manager, in conjunction, well, it's gone. We're running out of battery. As we look at this economic report, the peer regions is just one piece of it. And I'm going to put on my prom, I'm going to have some trouble here. Give me a second. As we look at these peer regions, again, have absolutely nothing to do with it. That's just one piece of it. Roxanne begins to talk about her endowment. In her 2011 proposal, she talked about a $20 million endowment with another $20 million to be donated at a later date. Now Lucas is talking about $40 million, but he won't talk about where that $40 million is going to come from. They keep talking about how it's going to create the national park. In her 2011 budget, which is the nearest thing we have to a proposal, this is her wording, not mine, a 4% return on that will generate around $800,000 a year that would be used to manage the park. The problem is she maintains a budget of $2.5 to $3 million. She still looks at makeup money that comes from the federal government to run this park. Now, this isn't even development. This is just operational budget. She also compared that park not to a full-service park like you would find at Acadia or Shenandoah or any of these other ones. She compared her 2011 park to Great Sands and Guadalupe, which are much more of a backwoods experience. So once again, there's a flaw in their reasoning. The job creation numbers are based on full amenity parks. Their plan is for a backwoods park, which is more in line with the land that's there now. Not miles and miles of scenic vistas, not miles and miles of tar roads, scenic overlooks, picnic areas, campgrounds. To develop any park to national park specifications, just the road budget itself would be phenomenal. A friend of mine who works for a major construction company here in the state, he and I sat down and ran numbers. We came up with anywhere from $50 to $57 million just to begin the infrastructure of a park. That is not going to be created with what she has coming out of the endowment. The other question is, where is this extra money for the endowment going to come from? She said, you know, theoretically has committed $20 million. I've never seen it written, anywhere that she set aside $40 million for it. And even if she has, it still does not cover all of the expenses needed to run a yearly operations budget of a park of that size. Now, the operations budget doesn't cover the construction budgets. The National Park Service currently, as Jim mentioned, is almost $12.5 billion in debt, or behind in its maintenance budgets and construction budgets. It can't take care of what it currently has. Acadia is shutting down parts of the park because it can't keep them going. They no longer meet safety standards. There is the Friends of Acadia, which has raised money. It right now has $23 million of endowments, which specifically go to maintaining trails, hiking trails, and carriage paths. This isn't creating them. This is maintaining them. If a $23 million endowment at Acadia has trouble maintaining paths and carriage paths, how is a $40 million endowment going to run a park and create a park? Never going to happen. And so, the presentation that, that it kind of disappeared on us tonight, probably my time is running out anyway. Ask some questions about all this stuff, because it's a smoke and mirror show. It's no different than Restore was in the very beginning. It's no different than her 2011 plan. There is no plan. That classic quote from a couple weeks ago from Lucas sitting at what might have been in this place here, where he talked about we don't have a plan, so we're going to talk about what it is so we can learn how to make a plan. I'm paraphrasing, but it sounded just ludicrous. So, thanks for having me come speak tonight. I'm sorry the presentation ran out, but thank you.
And finally, before our question and answer period, we would like to hear from our former longtime Maine State Legislator, Henry Joy. Henry?
Three very difficult acts to follow. I'd like to give you a little bit of a history lesson, and Maine has really fallen by the wayside in many situations. When a constitution was presented to the various colonies for ratification, they were promised that they would retain their sovereignty, and any states that would be created afterwards would have that same sovereignty. And he told me that Maine has given up its sovereignty, and if that's the case, we better fight hard to get it back. Also, there were only two types of lands that were available for the federal government to own in any of the states. Those were armories and naval ports. And when they were there to provide the common defense for the colonies and then states afterwards. What happened is that Congress and the government of Washington has really thrown the Constitution away and have taken all of these things away from the states. All of these national parks that have been mentioned, really, the state should be taking them over and taking them back and running them as state parks. I put in a bill a few years ago to do just that in Maine. And needless to say, there was a line of people who came to testify against my bill, who all signed in as Friends of Acadia. And they kept referring it to as Acadia National Park. And really, under the terms that our country was created, they can't be a national park. So they asked me what I would do with it. I said I would recommend when the state takes it back that they hire a very successful businessman and have him operate that park. And they wanted to know what that would do. I said at the end of the year, that businessman will not be coming to you with his hand out this way saying, I want more money. And that's what happens when these are taken over by the federal government. There are many, many efforts that have been made to try to take over Maine's woodlands. Now you have a senator from Vermont who has put his name in to run for president, who's put in a bill called the Northern Forest Stewardship Act. That was quite a number of years ago, and it would have taken 26 million acres of land from upstate New York, across Vermont, across New Hampshire, and would have taken 16 million acres out of Maine. Now, that's much larger than our unorganized territories in Maine. We have about 10.6 million acres in Maine. That's considered unorganized territory. And this proposed park is right in the unorganized territory. One of the things that is a problem this way, when you start taking away taxation from the unorganized territories, the unorganized territories' taxes are what provide all of the services for the unorganized towns. And you start eating that up, the state is not going to be able to come up with that kind of money to provide those services for roads and health care and this and that. Yeah. They've closed most of the unorganized town territory schools, and of course that's part of this bringing it back to one state that doesn't care too much about the rural areas of the state. In this area that they're looking for the park, my great-grandfather cut logs in there years and years and years ago. There were 3 or 4 companies that worked in together. He lived in Siberia, and for some of you, I'm sure you all know where Siberia is. But I had the opportunity to be back in that country in 1959 when I got out of the military, because I got a part-time job for the summer working for the entomology department for the Maine Forestry Service. So I got a chance to look at all of that land, and that was an interesting job. It makes you feel pretty important when you have a sheet spread under a tree and then you're taking a broom or a stick and knocking the bugs down on the sheet and then pick them up and send them to Augusta. But it was interesting anyway. And that is coming up. They're saying that now, I was talking to a lady the other day, and she said that they're anticipating about 3 years before the next bloodworm gets here. Now I know that they did agree not to do spraying again, like they did with the DDT, and I talked to a gentleman who had been on that. He came back quite a number of years later, and they checked the wet places and found traces of that DDT there still there. So that's not a good way to handle it. But getting back to Senator Leahy and his Northern Forest Stewardship Act, that would have turned all of that land, 26 million acres, over to the control of the federal government. And you've heard that the federal government is not necessarily the best manager of all of these things that they have. We then, Representative Shire from Tottenham put in a bill a few years back to create the Northwoods Park of 3.2 million acres. And you've heard that number thrown at you before. That fortunately did not pass. But the idea is still there. And if you read what's being written about this, you'll find that 3.2 million acres is probably not the end result of it. You will find that they're going to throw more about climate change at you. But one of the things they're not bothering to tell you is that we live in a carbon-based world. And carbon dioxide is not the big criminal to create global warming or climate change. Water vapor is a much more serious threat in creating climate change than the carbon dioxide will ever be. And if the climate warms up a little bit, is it going to be a problem? Let me go take you back in history again. When the Vikings came down along the east coast of this continent for the first time, they named it Vinland because there were so many grapes growing. And that means much warmer temperatures than happen on a regular basis. I was concerned the other day because I read about a group that is trying to loan money to Millinocket. And that is the Northern Boundary Commission. And they've managed to come up with some money from somewhere. But when you stop and think about a Northern Boundary Commission, you're going back to Senator Leahy's biodiversity area. I went to a meeting in, I belong to the UTU, the Unorganized Territories United. We fought on land takeovers quite a while ago. We had a meeting scheduled next to high school, and Jim St. Pierre was supposed to be there to represent Restore on the panel that was going to be talking. When he found out the UTU was there, he left and wouldn't be on the panel. But he left behind him a very interesting paper that shows the process of depopulating all of the towns from Jackman to Newport and all of the towns west of the I-95. Now, with that, Millinocket, East Millinocket, and then do I think there may be gateway communities? If you're depopulated, you're not going to have a community. And that's down the road as one of the end results. They also said earlier that it's going to take a long time to try to get a park. And yes, it is. But that is still in the works. Those thoughts are out there by people. And when you start to look at it, what is it they're really after? They're really after control. Now think about that. And this so-called recreation area that they have, under the fact that after the fact they've thrown away the Constitution, the President has the ability to declare that a recreation area. He can set land aside. You had a president a few years ago that set aside a tremendous area of land out in Utah. And it was interesting because under that land that was set aside in Utah was some of the cleanest burning coal in the world. And that was to pacify a country over in Asia that was selling an awful lot of coal to the United States. So their intentions are not always honorable. So beware and just make sure you find out what's behind the intentions that they have for you. This idea of a national park for Maine is totally unnecessary. And I'll stop right there because that's messages I'm sure you've got already. You wouldn't be here if you weren't trying to find out why it's not a good idea for Maine. And I would hate to see Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Edway depopulated, and any of the other towns in between as well. Even the little town where I live now would be gone. So I probably would wind up moving back to my Mohawk plantation. Thank you very much.
Okay, now, as promised, we do have some time, as long as you guys are interested, and would like to ask some questions, and you can ask them of the panel. These guys can all answer any of the questions. If you might want to have this mic down there. You can pass it around amongst yourselves. Pro park, against the park, somebody who wants to figure out what they're thinking tonight, you might have changed your mind. Do you have questions today and you'd like to have, let's hear from somebody who would like to see the park. Would you like to talk?
I can use the podium.
Oh, I do. Because we're going to talk to everybody in the audience.
That's what I plan to do.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to keep this is mine. No, these microphones are attached.
I don't need it. Thank you.
You're just going to take over?
Yeah, for a minute. I'd like to make a statement if I could. And then I'll bring a question. My name's Matt Polson, and I'd like a little extra time There's nobody here who's representing the people that support the park.
Everyone was invited.
Take the mic.
I'll tell you what. Everybody here, I'll tell you what. Do you want to hear what he has to say? I don't know all these people here. Everybody wants to hear what you want to hear? Then we'll let them talk.
I'll try not to be too long, but I think the issues are important. And I'd like to start by reminding us of where we stand, about a half a mile up the hill from a mill that used to run that's now closed and empty and being dismantled. And I would like to point out that just a few years ago, someone came to our town and told us that they were going to take that mill over and they were going to invest in that mill, and that was just a stepping stone to significant additional investment in an industrial plant that was going to bring jobs and economy to our area. And I don't think I have to tell you today where we stand on those commitments or promises that were made when that party came to these towns. Now, I don't know when they came here if they were lying to us or if they were misrepresenting the reality of the opportunity they thought they brought. And I would argue for those of us that live in this region, trying to decide who's lying to us or misrepresenting the facts is critical in charting a path to a prosperous economy. And I'm disappointed tonight in what I've heard, not because the stories haven't been interesting, and I think in some cases heartfelt, but because the facts are so shaky in the stories that we've heard. We heard Andy tell us that Roxanne Quimby is only going to raise $20 million or $800,000 a year towards the annual operating budget of the park, when she has publicly stated on record that she will provide $20 million of her own and raise $20 million more. Nothing we should take lightly from a woman that's paid hundreds of millions of dollars and has invested close to $100 million in building this park to date. We heard Jim Robbins talk about the fact that Lucas had closed the snowmobile trail by Bowling Camps. That is in fact completely untrue. The club that managed that trail, the Bowling Shinpon-Mattagami Club, abandoned that trail because it wasn't being well maintained and no one wanted to maintain it. If you call Terry Hill, the secretary of that club, she'll provide you with the meeting minutes in which that decision was made. There are plenty of people that know that's the truth, but there are others that would like people to think something else. I'd like to read a quote that came out of a working group that's working right now to actually try to revitalize the economy and build the forest products industry. It's a group that's working on the forestry economy supply chain analysis, and it's from McKinsey Global Institute. McKinsey Company's a well-respected consulting company. And it reads, our intuition has been formed by a set of experiences and ideas about how things work during a time when changes were incremental and somewhat predictable. Globalization then benefited the well-established and well-connected, opening up new markets with relative ease. Labor markets function easily and reliably. But that's not how things work now, and it's not how they're likely to work in the future. If we look at the world through a rear-view mirror and make decisions on the basis of intuition built on our experience, we could well be wrong. In the new world, executives, policymakers, and individuals all need to scrutinize their intuitions from first principles and boldly reset them when necessary. This is especially true for organizations that have enjoyed great success, like the towns that Paper made, that had a 100-year run that was absolutely incredible and provided quality of life and incomes unmatched in the state of Maine. It's an economy that sadly is behind us. I'd like to share a quick parable with you. It's the parable of Chicken Little. How many people know about Chicken Little? Seems like there are a lot that don't. It's pretty simple. Chicken Little was a chicken that was walking in the woods and an acorn fell on her head. Now, I want you all to know I have chickens and I love chickens, but that's not why I'm telling this story. It's relevant. An acorn fell on Chicken Little's head. And Chicken Little deduced that the sky was falling. And she ran to tell the king because she wanted to save the king before the sky fell. And along the way, she met her friend, Henny Penny. And she said, Henny Penny, stop looking for worms. We've got to tell the king the sky is falling. She went down the road and found 6 friends. And they were all running to tell the king when they met a fox. And the fox, who was pretty sly, said, you're going the wrong way, I'll lead you to the king. And he led them right to his foxhole. And just as they were about to go down the hole and be eaten by the fox, fortunately for them, The Princess foxhounds at a fox hunt came by, they chased the fox away, and Henny Penny and her friends lived. Now, some say that's just a story about a foolish chicken. But it's more than that. It's a story about a chicken that, while meaning well, almost led her friends to their death. And I think the forest products industry right now is playing the role of chicken. It means well, but it's about to lead these communities to their death. How many people here don't think that's where we're headed right now? As communities, as towns that can't pay for our schools. There are so many things that are inaccurate about what's been said here tonight that I'm going to focus on one thing. And I'm going to ask my questions and then make some comments. And the thing that I'm going to focus on is the Maine Forest Service faction. And I saw Pat Stroud come in, and we've got Doug Denico here, and Jim Robbins. First thing I want to know is how many people will say that this faction is an accurate representation of what's happening today on the ground? Anybody? Jim? Doug? Pat? You think this is accurate about what's happening today on the ground? It says Maine Forest, so I'm assuming this comes from the Maine Forest Service. Is this an accurate representation of what's happening on the ground today?
I was fascinated by Henny Penny, but you know, I don't think that's why I came off late tonight. You know, I really didn't come down here to hear about Henny Penny.
All right, let me get to my story then.
Great things going on in Maine right now.
If you drive to Nashville and take a look at the Irving Mill, maybe you could look beyond what you think is disaster.
No.
Maybe you should.
Let me get to the point. That original was but this statute makes you think it's not going to. And it makes you think it's not going to because 150,000 acres that are not in production today, that are privately owned by a private landowner who has the right not to cut the wood, are being portrayed as critical to the salvation of the industry. And let me run down and tell you why that's not the case. This faction is taken from information in a production that the Maine Forest Products Council put out in 2011, or using 2011 information. And that right there starts the problem. How many of our mills, how many people were employed in the mill across the street in 2011? How many people were employed in Bucksport in 2011? How many are employed today?
So I'm going to throw something in here real quick, because you've already brought up quite a bit of different things. I think the point Christian had made was that it was time for questions. As you decided earlier on to become part of the panel, that invitation was out there, that was turned down. I'm going to speak to something real quick, because you bring up a lot of different points. The acreage that Jim Robbins and the Maine Forest Products Service Council had brought up, you guys are drawing a line around other people's lands to acquire. You, at this point, Roxanne owns around 100,000 acres, you are now claiming 150. That's 50,000 acres of production.
You guys have an hour and a half. Would you give me 1 more minute to speak?
Well, you bring
Let's talk about 342 jobs that it says will be lost. Those jobs don't exist today. And the forest is amply suited to provide the wood needed to support the industry at the level it's functioning at.
That's a contradiction.
Again, talking about the land, the reality is everybody knows that this is more than just Roxanne's 150,000 acre park, which only owns 100,000.
That's something you are.
Do you have a question? Hey, why did she put all these dates up?
Folks, in 1980, there were 18,000 jobs in the forest products sector, right out of the Maine Forest Products Council paperwork.
Is there a question?
In 2011, there were 6,798. This is the trajectory. What's going to turn it around? There's room for both. I'm not against the industry or paper. I'm not against wood products. There's room for both, and this table and those that support the park need to productively engage in a conversation about how to make sure both sectors flourish. It is disingenuous to say that a 150,000 acre park is going to have any bearing on the loss of jobs. Jobs created in the future of the wood product industry are more likely to be in Bangor than in Millinocket. Jobs created by a partner can be right to put your children to work.
They're seasonal, girl.
Let's make it happen, guys. We can do it.
How much the market value for? Say what?
Matt, since you pointed me out as being one of the liars, I'd like to respond to that. First of all,
Maybe just misinformed.
the information about that snowmobile trail being shut down was given to me by Bob Myers, head of the Maine Snowmobile
Maybe just
Association.
misinformed.
You can find that on his website, okay? And when you talk about Kate Street down here, that's an extremely unfortunate thing that happened in Millinocket. Kate Street, I believe, sold Millinocket a bill of goods, and I believe you guys are too. You know, the next Kate Street.
That's the law. You get lost.
And I would also like to address the shrinkage in jobs in the forest industry. Give an example of our own mill in Searsmont, okay? In 2005, we invested $8.5 million in our mill and eliminated 4 jobs and increased our production by 20,000 board feet a day. But those 4 jobs were transferred to other places in the mill. We didn't lay anybody off. But what's happening in the lumber industry, timber industry, just like every other industry, they're mechanizing. And that's why you don't find the Worcester County potato farmers still hoeing by hand. They're using big tractors, which takes a few less people. And it's the same in every industry.
Right, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I take issue on several things you said, but I think I was perfectly clear, Matt, that there are bright spots and there are some spots in Maine that aren't so bright, and that makes it very difficult for people to see the whole. I'll give you an example of the bright spot that I didn't even mention, and that's down in Skowhegan. At the Sappy Paper Mill, they found a glitch or two that they could fix, and they went from 1,500 tons a day to 1,800 tons a day. The difference is being fed by spruce and fir. That's the spruce and fir that used to be fed into this mill here and maybe down in Bucksport. You just have to look at the state as a whole, Matt, and I don't think you're doing that when you look at that sheet. Some of us have a broader perspective than just one piece of Maine. Take that into consideration, please.
I could go over the sheet point by point, but I don't think people want me to take the time. There are other people that should have the right to speak. I'll leave with this. Validate your facts and the position they made, or apologize to the people of this region who withdraw this piece of paper. The choice is yours.
There was also one other question that Matt had brought up in that, and that's around Roxy endowment. The claim that, there's a $40 million endowment, which Lucas has repeated over and over again, rings hollow. There's a $20 million endowment, which she has pledged, with another $20 million to be raised. The question people have is, how is that to be raised? Is that to be raised from other individual donors, or is that expected the federal government will match it? In Acadia, the federal government at the time those endowments were set up was able to match the endowments. The federal government is broke. The National Park Service cannot afford to do so at this time. So any claims that somehow that money is going to magically appear. Also, in her 2011 proposal, and we have to refer to that because it's the only thing we have on paper. This new plan, there's not much on paper in regards to budgets, access, what it's going to cost to create anything. I don't know about you guys, but if you have something come before a planning board, generally there's a plan. If you're going to a homeowner as a builder, I have to have budgets. Where has any of that been given? How much is it going to cost? Where are the campgrounds going to go? Where are the picnic areas are going to go? Where are the restrooms going to go? Where are the restroom areas? Where's the running water going to come from? These are the things. We have this amorphous plan out there with absolutely no details, because each of those details has dollar signs applied to it. If you look at her 2011 proposal, her $20 million covers only 30% of the yearly operations budgets of a wilderness park. This new park is now twice that size. It's supposed to be a full amenity park like Acadia. How on earth are they ever going to create it? Where's the money going to come from to create a park? And the reality is, any park created is 30 to 40 years down the road. To get the visitation numbers to achieve imagined jobs.
I've heard the figure between 50 and 80,000 acres that are encompassed in this federal proposed park and the recreation area that Roxanne Quimby and Elliotville Plantation doesn't own yet. To me, that is unbelievable, the arrogance that you're going to propose a national park and national recreation land on land that you don't even own. How bad is that? I mean, that isn't the main issue. You're going to take these people's land. It is unbelievably arrogant. I'm sorry.
Just to talk about the endowment, man, Baxter, depending on the day, has got about $70 million in endowment. And most of the people in the room know that when you go to Baxter, you still have to pay a fee. That $70 million, even though the infrastructure they've got doesn't pay for all of it. And there are a lot of groups that keep bringing in money, like for the backcountry trails and things like that. But Baxter with $70 million still has to charge. It costs a lot of money to run those kind of things. And that's not even touching just our day-to-day operations, Matt. $70 million.
There's a question that just came through from the Maine Snowmobile Association. Matt, are you willing, or is Lucas willing, to reopen the trail to the lookout if the Maine Snowmobile Association takes over maintaining it? And is that what you are claiming at this moment? Because Bob Myers is willing to step up to maintain that trail if Lucas will guarantee access.
I can't answer that question.
Then apologize to the people.
I can't answer that question, but I can tell you this. He's in the process of investing money in building a new lookout within the National Recreation Area that the local clubs support that will be every bit as dramatic and grooming.
But the question is, because you claim that
I'm not going to say clear. I can't answer that. But I can tell you that he's building an alternative that will be better, and it was not his decision to close that trail.
that trail had a 5-year easement after Roxanne purchased it, which she refused to renew.
Not true. The local club gave it up. It's in the minutes of their meeting. Ask the club.
Now, Bob Myers and Maine Snowmobile Association has been trying to reopen that for years, or extend that easement. And he's asking right now, and he's saying it will be maintained if Lucas is willing to guarantee access.
I'll look into it.
You can't answer that? Kind of the same way it actually will be if the federal government takes over. Because if the federal government takes over, it was the exact same answer.
Hey, is there anybody left here that's undecided? Looks further on. Do you have a question, sir?
I'd like to address the issue the last gentleman brought up about depopulation. I didn't quite understand it all, but I do understand we already are facing depopulation. We probably lost several thousand, a few thousand in Millinocket in the past 8 years. And I attended a town council meeting last Thursday where the superintendent of the schools gave figures that were graduating this year, the senior class, about 56 people. And the incoming primary or first grade group projected for this fall is 22. So 12 years down the line, we're losing close to 3/4 of the population of the town. That means that, I believe it means that half the healthcare workers will be laid off, half the teachers will be laid off, all mom and pop shops will be closed because no customers. And when you lay off people, it goes last in, first out. We lose the youth that is working, and someone goes home. They're going to flood the market at home, and I attended, what I'm getting at, I'll finish right now, a prominent businessman was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and he said we're nearly on life support right now.
I'm not sure where the question was in all that.
If I can address that, the town,
act and help stabilize the population.
it's not going to. And one of the things is that towns all around the surrounding area are supposed to be depopulated by 60%. In the towns up my way, we've already hit that figure by people having to move out because they don't have any jobs.
That's the point.
It is sad what's happening. I know as I by another third, the depopulation. But there's no doubt about the population is shrinking around here. You know, the same thing happened up in Ashland. Ashland lost all its mills, everything shut down, and now everything is coming back to Ashland. Let's not include the possibility of coming back to Millinocket, because I believe it will eventually.
That's because you don't have an national law.
Okay, there's got to be more questions here.
The question I have, as everybody's sitting here, is who do we believe? Stand back and look at who do you believe. We're paying King Street Capital, what, $16 million? Where are they? Who do we believe? This proposal part thing, you know, and I'm not saying too much, but this has grown in size and people don't know where it's come from. Who do we actually believe? Everybody sold us down the river for how many years here? That's all I got to say.
It's who do we trust?
I'd like to say thank you for coming tonight to give some information. I was hoping that we would be able to hear both sides of the issue with a panel. But like Mr. Powers was saying, and like Mr. Polstein said, we were sold a bill of goods with Kate Street. And I'm just not ready or sure. I guess I'm not necessarily not ready, I'm just not sure who I believe and who to jump on their ship with and who to hang on to the tampons. I don't know, and I hope everybody tries to get all the information that they can from both sides and to make a really educated vote when they go to the polls.
100% agree. I think you guys will all agree with that, wouldn't you? Know what you're voting on. You have a question?
Yes. I think the biggest question is they keep saying 150,000 acres. Now, that's a lie in itself. They don't own 150,000 acres, and they're trying to lure everybody in with a 75,000 acre recreational area. They don't own the land on that recreational area. And they go into this deal saying, well, trust me, we're going to get this, blah, blah, blah. Well, down the road, when we don't get it, who's going to be that fall? We are believing this pig in the boat.
Would you like to comment on that, any of you?
You know, some of the facts around it. Let's take a look at what happens with Acadia National Park. Jim brought up the fact when the federal government is involved, you no longer control, we as a state no longer control decisions on that land. Recreational access, guides. I've heard a couple times from both Matt and from Lucas, you know, what a benefit it'll be to the local guides. Local guides will become vendors to the United States government. They will have to apply for that right. They will have to meet standards, both insurance, training, and a business plan. How many guides do you know have a business plan? If there are too many guides on a given piece of property, and this is what has happened in other parts of the country, it goes out to bid. How many guides do you know that are probably going to write up a business plan and put it out to bid? Those are the type of things that happen. Look at Acadia 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. You know, Acadia Corp, which had an 80-year contract with the National Park, a local business employing local people, all of a sudden was undercut by a national corporation. That type of thing will happen here. Who's going to be able to start up and start a business vending within the national park, knowing that a national corporation will come in and undercut at some later date? Those are the type of facts that are real. Access issues within the national park. How many of you remember Governor LePage with state troopers at the Moosehorn Preserve when campers were kicked out of Cobscook Bay State Park? A state park, people had reservations for Columbus Day weekend, But because the access road to Cobscook crossed the Moosehorn Preserve, the federal government decided to shut it down. They shut the boat launch down. The governor went down with state troopers. It was gone, it was closed. The government, there was no ability to access that land. Is that what you really want for this region? Those are facts.
I'm going to come back to what the lady said a little earlier about Kate Street selling you guys a bill of goods. And I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. And I think it's a tragedy. But please don't think that all the rest of us that have been in this business for generations are that way. Look at Irving just built this brand new mill. And I mean, that's not with smoke and screens. I was up there the other day, just an incredible mill. You know, tons of people working there, putting out a great product. We should all be proud of that. Look at Pleasant River down here. It's just tons of companies in Maine in the forest industry. And these are known jobs that we have now. You want to trade them, these 338 jobs that Doug was talking about, you want to trade them for a possibility of getting some part-time jobs? Low-paying part-time jobs?
If we could have questions, it helps.
Yeah, I have a question relative to investment capital. How much industrial investment capital is sitting on the sidelines today because of this debate of the park? You know, just think about it for 1 minute. You know, you have to really think about that because of all the assets we have, the timber resource and the potential for industrial development to really grow. And now this debate is going on. And the sooner this debate goes away, I think the sooner we can get on with our lives in this region.
As I pointed out by Pat Stroud when he spoke up here in Millinocket about a month or two ago, pointed out Millinocket sits at the greatest woods harvesting road in the United States with a golden road. You have energy with the dams. You have a railroad system, an interstate system, a skilled workforce. Why is nobody investing here? Their capital are going to other parts of the state where they're not in fear that 5, 10, 15 years after making their capital investment, the federal government is going to begin affecting what they do. We're going to hear about emission standards, like a class 1 or a class 2. The reality is the land manager of a national park, beyond just emission standards, affects what happens in the local communities. The National Park website, you can go to it, it very specifically talks about what the National Park Director and the land use manager can do to buffer areas, not even those areas of the inholdings and the acquisitional boundaries. They will affect your local planning boards. They will affect decisions made at LERC. They will affect decisions made at the DEP. Jim talked about the 50-mile circle around Acadia that affects his plan. Acadia also weighs in with Sappy down in Westbrook, and with a new page now over in Verso, over in Rumford. 4 or 5 years ago, the DEP and the EPA hammered out agreements on the new equipment to be put in for clean air emissions. And guess who stepped in and gummed up the works for 6 or 7 months? But the National Park Service did not like what the EPA had done and slowed down that investment. And that's beyond what their control is supposed to be. It doesn't stop them from doing it.
Can you please tell me again what Bob Myers suggested would happen to that lookout trail?
Response to Matt? Whatever. I think he and Matt have had some conversations in the past.
Well, I think that what you said is that if the trail were to be reopened, that he would take over.
His question is Matt stating that if people are willing to maintain that trail, will it be reopened?
Bob said that the MSA would groom the trail.
If someone maintained it. I took that to mean that they would commit to doing it. Knowing Bob,
and knowing what the lengths that they have gone to try to keep that open, I guarantee people would step up.
Okay. I find it interesting, Bob suggests that he would be willing to maintain the trail because I was a former chairman of the Maine Snowmobile Trail Fund Advisory Council. I was 6 years in that. I'm currently president of the Drummer and Riders Snowmobile Club. The legislation that's currently before the House and the Senate, LD 716, was a bill that I wrote, and our locals, Representative Steve Stanley, submitted on my behalf. And it's to raise the snowmobile registration fees to help out the starving clubs of the state of Maine. Bob Myers and the MSA was opposed to that bill. Okay, it passed, came out of the IFW committee with an ought-to-pass recommendation. And it's interesting that Bob says he'd be willing to groom that section of trail because 2 years ago, when my legislation passed the House and the Senate and then LePage vetoed it, one of the biggest things that he was against was the fact that the state of Maine had 4 areas within the state that no snowmobile clubs were willing to groom sections of the very important trails. And he was deaf against the fact that the Department of, back then it was Forestry and the Bureau of Parks and Land Snowmobile Division was taking that upon themselves and grooming it at a higher cost per mile than what any other snowmobile club in the state of Maine was getting. Well, you have to remember when a state employee gets behind the wheel of a snowmobile trail groomer, he has to get workman's comp, he has to get unemployment, he has to get retirement, all that stuff. And so it was proven that the cost per mile was exceptionally higher. And when local clubs were given the opportunity to take over those sections of trail, none of them would do it. So Bob's idea was, well, we should abandon those things. So then what we were going to have is big gaps in the trail system between point A and point B because nobody was going to groom them. Well, when it's all said and done, the state is still involved in grooming all 4 sections of trail. And it was an idea that Bob had put aside because he found out that there's nobody that was willing to do it. There's nobody willing to groom that trail up there either. And it's amazing that the MSA under Bob Myers' direction is opposed to the park when both of the local clubs up there are very much in favor of the park and in favor of the National Recreation Area. That's all I got to say about that.
I can speak. The reason that isn't being groomed over there is because Roxanne Quimby will not allow a big enough machine to stay over there to do the job properly. That's the reason the lookout isn't being groomed. The bridge that goes across the East Branch of the Comstock River has been sold to Bowling Pond Cane. And that's all I have to say.
Did everybody hear what he said? Did everybody understand what he was talking about?
Say it again.
Say it again.
The reason that the trail isn't being groomed to lookout on the other side of the river is because they've never been able to keep a big machine over there in order to do that job properly. Now, that was abandoned and the Bowling Madigan and Snowmobile Club sold the bridge that our snowmobile dollars paid for to Bowling Canes. So essentially that trail is all done.
And I think that's the gentleman's name over here, but I certainly can't ask Bob all of that in a text message that quickly, so my apologies.
We are way past the time that we were supposed to be here during this, but I don't mind staying. You guys already answering any questions, if they have any? Or you want to stay around a little more of this, or is it time? Is it time for you guys? We have one more, would you like to make one more comment? You're all set. Thank you folks for coming here today. Appreciate you taking the time. Hope you learned something and take that information back with you.